Hello and welcome to episode 215. Oh shit. 214 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 8th of November 2017. My name is Chris Thurston and today I am joined by Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Alex Wiltshire.
Hello. That's
right. We're keeping rolling after that intro. This is brand new territory for
us. Live podcast.
Indeed. We just do it live.
Live to tape.
This is the first one we've ever done in the afternoon. Can you believe it?
Didn't we, when we had the Tokyo 42 guys on, wasn't that the afternoon?
This is the second one we've done in the afternoon.
Keep rolling.
This year.
Trivia fans.
Oh, you better believe it's day drinking. I haven't even had a sip yet.
That's nice. It's dangerous.
And that's just how we roll at 3 p.m. So we should kick off with actually kind of a run of shitty news, not to ping pong tonally too hard, but there's been a lot of studio closures or mass layoffs lately, particularly seemingly in the world of sort of medium sized studios
in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, yeah, I suppose. So I would number among this list, and I don't know if we want to talk about them specifically or all at once, but it's worth kind of thinking about as a phenomena. Telltale announced 90 layoffs, which is close to a quarter of the studio, I believe.
I didn't realize it was so big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the surprise, like 90. Holy shit, that's a lot. And 25%. Oh, that's not that much. Like, wow, that must have been a big company.
It was, but nonetheless, and also, Runic, have closed, which were the creators of Torchlight.
Torchlight 2 and Hob. I think one other thing.
I don't know
what that was, but yeah, that was Hob seemed to not really gain traction. Like I heard of it being announced, and then I didn't know it had come out
because that came out in October, or was it late December or late September or something, wasn't it?
Oh, that would explain why I didn't notice it coming out because I was obsessing over.
You were focused.
And then also, we probably could have covered this last week, but didn't because I forgot. But also CCP's closure of its VR studios. As well, which maybe not quite in the same band because it's a part of a company rather than a specific studio, but nonetheless, those were independent kind of wings of CCP working on that stuff.
So the Valkyrie is out?
Do you mean as in out, as in it's been released?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been out for years.
Right.
But in a kind of early accessy kind of...
No, it's out.
Isn't it? Okay.
It's out. And it just had its second edition with Warzone, which we spoke about on the pod a couple of weeks ago. So I'm not fully sure what the status is in there. That was a strange one for me because I had been speaking to those guys about their game and their plans for the future of it only a couple of weeks before. I don't have any insight in it because it took me completely by surprise. But yeah, it feels like, I don't know if it's easy to draw a line between all of these things, but it certainly seems like there's a sort of point where these are all, I would say, I know medium is so relative, but medium-sized projects to some degree. They're not tiny indie things that can support the people who make them off modest success, nor are they huge, big-budget games with a massive marketing push behind them. And that's, I would say Telltale fit into that category, particularly lately, given the amount they're doing. Runic do as well. I don't know whether times are unusually tough for game developers at that band of games development or not, but nonetheless.
Yeah, I guess this is the sort of the level of development or scale, studio scale, that has long been seen as the tough place to be, where, I guess, I mean, I say that, but actually it's become clear I had no idea how big Telltale were, so that seems almost AAA size, like, maybe not AAA, but like one notch below that if you're, 360 people must have been if 90 was 25%.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a huge studio. Well, by indie standards. Not that they were thought of that way, I guess.
No.
It's this sort of drive to doing smaller number of bigger things because the Telltale announcement of that came with, we're going to concentrate on a few higher quality, fewer games. And that's certainly, if you look at the big publishers, they don't make little games anymore. They went through a phase of doing smaller games alongside their big releases, but now it's big all the way. And it feels like that's like an expression of that move.
Yeah. Telltale, I'm guessing Telltale were also I guess, had a few big years of having a lot of big licenses all at the same time. You know, like doing Batman and Guardians of the Galaxy and
Game of Thrones,
Back
to the Future.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's rare to think of a studio that's working with DC, Marvel, Game of Thrones, and other things. Minecraft, all at the same time.
You have to wonder, their licensing fees must be taking a big chunk out of their profits.
And perhaps, you know, some combination of, maybe this is a unique situation for them necessarily, where there's a saturation of the type of game that they're making, because their games are all of a type,
more or less. They're the same?
No, but there's certainly a Telltale mold, right?
There is, yeah.
And yeah, I think, I mean, to be honest, like, I haven't played a Telltale game in years. And I wonder if that is, you know, partly because of the saturation of them, and maybe focusing on trying to repeat the success of The Walking Dead would be the thing to do. Not that that will help the people who've been laid off, in that, if that's the decision that they've made, but perhaps there is that logic.
Yeah. I guess it's been, like, if Telltale didn't exist, would we have had tie-in games for all of those, IPs, but just like, really bad ones?
Yeah.
Because there wasn't really a track record for decent tie-in games, was there?
No.
It felt like they established a format that worked well for most things.
But it was very much a format. I think there's a company, they seem to be mostly a formatting company, like, that had an engine that were able to stretch that, their mode of screenwriting, their mode of game design, and kind of the technical modes to kind of stretch it. I read an article, I think it was by Patrick Klepek, where this morning, where he said, it's a shame that he published, you know, to look back on it like this, but he was talking about how creaky Guardians of the Galaxy felt, and that was the most recent set in the series, but it feels very much the same as Walking Dead, and came with many of the kind of strange timing and animation problems that kind of pointed out even back then.
Yeah, but I think the thing here is that those are possibly foreseeable issues. I don't feel like I know enough about how the company runs to attribute who's responsible for that formula being run dry. Yeah. And it's unlikely to be the 90 people who've just
of course,
lost their jobs, right? Like, I can imagine them staffing up a lot around the idea that they can template this kind of game and work with a lot of different licensees and produce in that way.
I suppose, I'm not, this is like, sounds like I was pointing kind of fingers, but really, I'd say that it isn't, it feels like it might be part of a slightly different trend to the thing that's been closing Runic and places like that.
Yes, that's fair.
Feels a little bit different.
On the size thing, I guess a point of reference here is that even after losing 90 people, if they're 270 now, that means they're about the same size as Valve, which is kind of a crazy thought.
Yes, that would mean that they're bigger than a huge number of studios, actually. Like, that's comparable with a company like Hi-Rez, or, you know, like any other kind of medium-sized, what we'd consider maybe like a small publisher, I guess. So it's not, you know, maybe not comparable, as you say. Runic is a shame, but as you say, Hob.
Did you play Hob?
I didn't.
It sounded, you never know with the statements that come out with these things, but the official line was that their parent company, or the company that owns them, are looking to focus exclusively on online stuff, which is, like, it's not as if Runic couldn't do online stuff, because the Torchlight had, had online multiplayer, right?
Yes, it did. Also, Torchlight had, as far as I know, quite a big had a presence in China under a different publisher as a servicey kind of thing, I think. I say that because I saw it at China Joy when I was in China with sort of localized art and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Travis Baldry, am I getting that right? One of their founders. He did a sort of a chain of tweets when the closure was announced, just sort of random memories and reflections on Runic. And one of them was that Torchlight 2 started out as an MMO, and the only reason they didn't do that is he just thought it'd be too hard, and they just scaled back because he could see it was going to be a fatal amount of work. But yeah, the Torchlight for sure feels like something you could make into an online, an online focused thing, with all of the ways of making money that entails.
So this reminds me a little bit of an article in an interview with Housemarque, who made Nex Machina, so maker of twin stick shooters, basically very good twin stick arcade shooters. And it wasn't an article about they're not closing, but they are moving away from the genre that made their name.
And that's because Nex Machina didn't
do very well. And they put that down to simply being kind of audience saturation for the amount of people who want a well-made, and the amount of people who will appreciate a well-made twin stick shooter. And I wonder if this is maybe a pattern with other developers. Maybe I'm trying to find patterns where there aren't any, but it feels like at the beginning of the sort of one of the things that sustained, I don't really say indie rush because there's lots of buzzwordy kind of stuff about that, but sustained these sort of medium-sized studios growing up around like one or two hit games, particularly things like Xbox Live Arcade or PlayStation Network games, when they were maybe among the first games on those platforms. There was that wave of success for things like twin stick shooters and stuff because, you know, in the era when cheap games on consoles were a bit of a novelty, Steam was a more curated environment where those things were more visible and that kind of thing. That sustained those things, but maybe that created a false sense of how big those audiences could potentially be. Those genres, even something like the action RPG, scale off at a certain point, and making same or similar things again is going to hit possibly success, maybe, but unlikely to be this, you know, build upon the success you had last time. And if you staffed up in that time, it's probably not going to be enough this time. So that seems to be a kind of depressing trend, I guess. But those kinds of, it just feels like a story that I've seen a lot this year of small indie studio has one success, becomes medium-sized indie studio, struggles with second game, decides to refactor itself as a small indie studio again.
Yeah. I mean, Chinese Room, right? Laid off everyone except the founders, and are changing genres. And yeah, there are also, I've heard quite a lot of stories of indie sequels doing less well than their originals, and developers needing to rethink. Makes me kind of curious about, all the more curious about Spelunky 2, because that's a hugely successful first game. And right now it feels like, of course, Spelunky 2 will be a success, of course. Like, you know, all of us in this room are going to buy it, right? And I imagine everyone, I sort of talk to in the Spelunky,
Spelunkiverse.
Yeah, okay. Let's go with that. The Spelunkiverse will buy it for sure. But, you know, we could have said the same thing about Nidhogg maybe, and you were saying that Nidhogg 2 has really not compared to the success of the original.
I think that, you know, like, there are so many factors, but I think one of them though is just fatigue. You know, a lot of the games like Nex Machina, it's another twin stick shooter.
Yeah.
I think what you were saying is like completely valid. I think, and along with that, I think there's an expectation for, you know, you can get a lot of twin stick shooters for like £2 on Steam now. And so when this one comes out at 15 quid or whatever, Nex Machina came out with a load of extra bits to it, it was quite hard to read it from the outside. You know, what is this game? It had pretensions to other things. I don't mean that in a bad way, but because it was a good game. It was a really good game. But, you know, I think that it was pushing against what audiences wanted from that particular thing. And then, with Nidhogg, I think audiences wanted Nidhogg, you know, and that was giving them a load of extra bits that they maybe didn't want.
Yeah, I wonder it's interesting because, you know, pre-indie being a thing of this scale, you'd probably moan about the fact that all audiences seem to want our sequels, right? But the pattern here is of audiences actually rejecting sequels somewhat. And, that's interesting. I think it maybe suggests that if you don't have the kind of big publisher marketing budget to really push through awareness and to create a quote unquote, going to throw up in my mouth,
understand your audiences in the first place.
To create a brand that has a life of its own, then as Call of Duty is, or Assassin's Creed is, or Battlefront, Star Wars, obviously Star Wars, those kinds of things, then then anticipation doesn't work in quite the same way. You will reach the people who loved your first game, the Spelunkiverse, as you say. But you won't necessarily reach beyond that. And also, you might not even reach all of those people, right? Because you might have ended up describing the extent of what encompasses the Spelunkiverse.
Yeah, I also feel like indie games, are very novelty driven. I don't mean novelty in a derogatory way, because that's, that's what I try and that's what I aim for in my games, is to be a novelty. And their success in particular is novelty driven. You don't get a lot of indie successes that are just a bit like something else that's already out. Like, I think Cave Blazers, from what I gathered, I think just looking at Steam Spy, did not seem to do super great. And yet I think it's kind of a refinement on what Spelunky did. And there's not a lot of excitement around that. It's hard to get buzz for something that's just like that, but it's a bit better in these ways, but a bit different in these ways. Whereas, Spelunky is like, we've merged roguelikes with platformers in a way you've never seen before. And so, in a novelty-driven area, sequels are maybe less of a sure bet.
I'd be quite interested in calling a little kind of bets between friends on whether it would do, because on Spelunky's side, though, like, it has an integral to it is novelty. Sort of players of Spelunky have spent years finding and drilling into all its secrets. And so the idea for them of a new game with new secrets, might pull them through, and, and that might be the kernel of, meeting the same success,
Yeah, I honestly think it could go either way. I think it could be a bit of a Dark Souls 2 kind of scenario, where it ends up being really dug into by the people who were likely to love it, but doesn't necessarily find a, audience beyond, that is complete guesswork, though, to be honest. But like,
I'm hoping it's in 3D.
Risk of Rain 2 is 3D.
It is, isn't it?
Made a side on,
I forgot about that.
not really Spelunky-like, but a sort of roguelike, thing. And then the second one is that in a 3D engine. Like, they really tried to stay true to the art style as well, which is pretty fucking difficult, I imagine.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I wonder if, like, it reminds me of a conversation I brought up in the last episode of the podcast about brand again. Maybe I'm starting to believe in brand as a concept. God help me.
Chris Brand's Thurston.
I know, just love them. Just can't get enough of them. I just want to engage with them all day. But anyway, is that probably the most successful thing to achieve with your indie game is to establish a kind of style for yourself as a developer, or your team as developers.
Yeah.
That then sort of gives people a sense of what to expect from the next game, but doesn't tell them what to expect.
Novelty within the style.
Yeah. So like
Zachtronics.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the next Zachtronics game, but I don't know what it's going to be.
Or something from that guy, Pentadac guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That guy. Dom Gansis, whatever that PC Gamer thing was.
There's Murder Simulator. I don't know.
Yeah. When is he going to make Gunpoint 2 though? That's the thing. And
it is. I mean, people, wanted that. That's what no one was saying. Like, hey, go off and do something different. They're all saying Gunpoint 2. And I didn't.
And that's probably for the best.
It worked out. Yeah.
Like, I think that's probably the most valuable thing. And then to set, if you can then generate a bit of hype by saying like, hey, people love my first thing. This is my new thing. It's going to be different. And it's going to surprise you again in a different way. Then that's probably the most powerful position to be in, rather than made a sequel. That said, there's also precedent for series taking a while to find their form and to find their audience.
Yeah.
So basically, what the fuck do I know?
We don't know.
Who knows? Time will tell.
Good luck.
Yeah. Best of luck, I suppose.
But Derek Yu, though, he's been happily making that huge
UFO 50.
Yeah,
is it
UFO 51? No, UFO 50. Yeah. So.
Yeah, so he's done his different thing.
So there's your novelty right there.
Believe that's the tagline.
Speaking of newly independent studios making sequels to things, IO, the newly independent IO Interactive, have confirmed that they're making a new Hitman game. They haven't said anything about it really, other than it exists, and it will include some franchise firsts.
So they also just launched the Game of the Year edition of Hitman, whatever we call it, series.
The Hitman New.
Why didn't they call that Hitman Serial? Because he's like a serial killer, but also it's a series of things.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Game of the Year edition of that actually has a load of new stuff in it. It's a new campaign, but it's not, I don't think it's new areas as such. I think it's like the, do you remember they did that bonus episode where they went back to Paris basically, and it was Christmas and nighttime?
Yeah.
I think they've done that for a bunch of maps. I don't know if they're all nighttime, but like basically the same area, but we've redone it in some way, and then made a new story to tie those together. I haven't played this at all, but that is both part of the Game of the Year edition, and you can buy it as an add-on for the if you already own the complete season for I think $20. I don't know what that's like, but then I think either with the launch announcement or shortly after the launch announcement, they said that thing about the next Hitman game, which I don't like. We've all been expecting a season 2 announcement, and in fact, some people were disappointed with this Game of the Year thing when that was announced because they were expecting a season 2 announcement. And I'm like, if I put myself in their shoes, and the main series was that this sort of episodic thing wasn't a complete smash hit in terms of sales, it seems like. I think I would be tempted. I don't think I would want to release something called Season 2. I think I would just call it a new game and basically
when you say Season 2, you're telling people who didn't play the first one.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they shouldn't play this one.
Yeah, you want to make sure it's as appealing as possible to people who didn't buy the last one.
Hitman S-Town.
Very good.
And as for franchise firsts, what could they be? Loot box? I'm thinking.
Saving people. Oh no, you actually totally do that in Hitman 2. It would just be great if you just had a med kit.
The most different Hitman game is Absolution, which is also the worst Hitman game. So I'm a bit nervous about franchise first. Not that I want a completely conservative Hitman game, but
so I would say, because I really like the serialized kind of nature of the most recent Hitman, but I suspect they will go do a story, like tell a much stronger story. But try to make them, into discrete things. I mean, there was a story in Hitman, but I couldn't tell you what on earth happened.
Yeah, I liked that about it, in that the story is totally separated from it. Yeah. And when you finish the mission, you get a cutscene, it was always like a bit of a surprise. I was like, this is a story.
But it meant that game didn't have a what would you call it? Like a character, like you couldn't pin a single image to that thing other than the Agent 47.
They've always struggled with that. Like every time they've done it, it's been bad. Blood Money did have characters. Like I can picture some of them from the cutscenes. Like they came up in the game eventually. I
remember a lot of air of Catholic guilt. I remember that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that in Catholic.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing to market anything around, I'd say.
That's what the kids are after these days.
All right.
It really traffics.
The franchise first I want is co-op.
That would be cool.
I think that's one of the things they could announce.
Agent 48.
Agent 74. He's got loads of hair.
It's all hair.
It's just Chewbacca. He's naked and he's covered in hair. The ultimate odd couple. He's got a high-pitched squeaky voice.
Oh, one of you could be a dog. K9 or
a dog. A co-op where Agent 74 is Agent K9 or something.
Yeah, do you remember, Chris, that we did that assassination mission in GTA 4 or 5? Where it was kind of like you basically you could go to assassinate someone in a mansion, but if the stealth section goes wrong and you're spotted, he will run to his car and drive off.
Oh yeah.
And so I waited at the end of the driveway with a sniper rifle for if that happened, I could shoot him in the head while she went off and did the stealth bit. And that was really cool.
And that was happening.
Did it work?
Yeah, and that was happening.
Yeah, I didn't have to do anything, and yet it was still a great experience. I was just standing at the end of the road, just waiting for Chris to do his thing, and if it went wrong, I knew I'd be able to kill the guy. And it didn't go wrong. I was like, great. We're pros.
And that was happening while 2 other people from the team were off doing a different side prep thing, fighting the police from a bank roof or something like that. That's actually great.
I actually had a real soft spot for the kind of work-like parts of a really fantastical, exciting job like being a hitman. Like the thing I loved in Metal Gear Solid 5 was like physically picking up your target and loading it into the back of a van and then driving to the destination.
Yeah,
all like
set up and
mechanics.
And
getting your
and so just
dealing with the repercussion stuff.
Yeah. So just like waiting at the end of the road with a sniper rifle, then when it's over, just putting a sniper rifle away, getting in a car and driving off. Like it's all just basically work, but it was, in that context, it was really cool.
Well, I think that could work perfectly for Hitman as a co-op experience, because it is like, most of my favorite sort of MMO experiences are down to the sort of that kind of just simply living a small part of being a small part of the overall machine is surprisingly satisfying in co-op. Yeah. It's like why I used to be a dropship pilot in PlanetSide, and all you would do is drop people off and fly off again and wait, and then come and pick them up again and then fly off. And you never basically, you just waited, basically. You're just a taxi driver. And,
but
that's
because
great.
their success, would make or not,
yeah,
would make influence your experience.
The one moment where it really matters, where you kind of pull them out of a situation that's really shit and everyone's cheering. That's such an amazing moment that it makes up for everything else. Like that, I suppose GTA 5 is still the game that does that, but
I haven't played any of the heists.
You should. They're good.
Really would
they're my favorite thing about that game. Top to bottom, my favorite thing about that game. In fact, I'd be happy to do them again. Maybe
I'll do them with you.
Yeah, reinstall that game. That's fun. There are problems with them, checkpointing issues and things like that. Like, they are great if, like Tom says, that mission is great if you do it perfectly and you have that experience. But what you can also have is the experience of doing it again and again and again and again and again.
And also, like, they'll split you up into two teams, and if the other team fuck up, you've got to redo your thing, even if you did it right.
That's not your point of failure.
Yeah, which can be cool if it creates a dramatic moment, but there are risks to it. But yeah, I'd love them to do something like that with Hitman. Because, like, an elusive target type thing, but where you can go in with a friend and kind of do it together would be a really cool.
Yeah.
Or like, the two of you learn a kind of Ocean's 11 way of taking a level apart. Because, it becomes exponentially more complicated to design at that point because you have two players operating in two different parts of the level. But that'd be, I want that more than I want them to double down on story about 1 million times more, to be honest.
Yeah. I have a load of stuff I'd like to see them do expanding on the contract system, which I have written about on my blog, so we can just link that. But basically, more ability to kind of like play around on a level, find an interesting way to do it, and then just click a button to challenge your friends to do that. Just say, like, I killed this guy with a hammer with no one seeing me, and all in the suit. And then that just gets packaged off and sent to your friends, and like, well, Tom did this. Can you do that?
Yeah, for sure.
The contract system like tries to do something like that, but it's so limited in what you can specify. You really just specify murder weapon and disguise, and that's it. And a lot of the murder weapons you just can't choose because they don't count as a specific death type and all this other stuff.
Trying to think of how to segue this into our other news, which is 2K's brilliant assertion that all of their future games, speaking of maybe like franchise first that we wouldn't want to embrace with Hitman, was it 2K that said all of their future games would include
Take-Two?
Fuck, sorry.
And we've established
but
2K.
Will be 2K and Rockstar.
Yeah, so 2K is a label of Take-Two. I think Take-Two are the parent company, and then
right. So it does affect Take-Two.
Yep.
But it is 2K. Take-Two.
It is Take-Two, and 2K are a label of Take-Two.
Okay. What did they say?
They said, all their future games will include some kind of recurring payment incentive, some way to buy things after buying the game. So there was something like recurring payment options
which
for customers.
To me didn't sound simply like expansions, right?
Yeah, they did. There was a clarifying line in the. I'm actually not sure what the occasion was, whether this is like a shareholder call or something, but they said this might not necessarily be online functionality, and it might not necessarily be a virtual currency, but some kind of way to spend money on the game after its release.
Right. I suppose this loops into what we were saying about the whole kind of loot box situation and the way that bigger publishers are repositioning themselves as basically 100% service game companies. Some of those service games just happen to cost 60 quid.
I'm struggling to think of games on that scale that aren't doing that,
Yeah, they all do it to some extent.
It's happened already.
It's always, even if it is DLC would I think, fulfill that
I suppose that was
statement.
My thing here is whether this means stuff like hats for XCOM.
Yeah.
But, because for example, the Firaxis games have, plenty of DLC and expansions and things. Is this just mean that plan remains that plan, or does this mean more aggressive monetization of Civ, for example?
I mean, it depends what it means by recurring, because when I read that in isolation, I thought he meant sort of, in the free-to-play world, there's a line between games where you can buy all the stuff and games where there is no way to buy all the stuff. There is, one of the things you can buy is energy to give you more ability to play, or, loot boxes, I guess, are part of this, where there is no limit to how much you can spend. Because in the free-to-play world, that's been the gist of things for ages. Everyone's realized 7 years ago or something that, you've got to have no upper limit on how much people can spend on your game, if you want to make the most money. And people have, long been sort of trying, to fight against that. Like, some developers don't want to do that, and obviously a lot of players don't want that. But I've heard many stories of people saying, we made it so that the most you can spend on our game is $50, and it bombed. And then we made a game where you can spend as much as you like, and it was great because the 1% of people, the whales, who spend ridiculous amounts, more than make up for whoever you lose by from the people who don't like that kind of system.
Mm. So yeah, not necessarily like surprising news, but it does indicate that maybe that is, speaking maybe about the struggles of medium-sized studios, this is one of the ways in which those big studios are paying for the future.
Yeah. It's actually, if it can just be DLC, then it's fine.
Yes, absolutely.
I think this is such a strong trend in our industry now that it's not a question of like, is this going to happen? Can we stop it? Hope it doesn't happen. It's really just happened, and it's a question of which studios are going to be nice about it and which studios are going to be exploitative about it.
Yeah.
It's very few studios' interest to be purely exploitable, because your game will bomb because you'll get a bad name, but it's how insidiously they can kind of inject into it while keeping the games kind of playable. And they're getting good at it.
Yeah, they are getting good at it.
That's the Call of Duty thing of giving a quest or whatever it is to watch people opening loot boxes.
Is that a thing?
And so there are daily quests, and this is one of them. Watch 3 people open a loot box. And I looked at the screenshots and I posted this.
Christ.
You get a medal for it, like it's a medal done like a Medal of Honor or like the Purple Heart type thing for watching 3 people for loot boxes.
Because the big innovation to that game is you don't open loot boxes in a discrete screen. You open them in public.
Yeah, we talked about that last week, but I didn't. Oh my
in the
God.
weird limbo area. Where did you say it was, Chris?
Isn't it like styled after Normandy Beach?
It does look like that.
So,
Yeah, I mean, like not like during D-Day. It's like immediately after D-Day, like D+1 day. Like
E-Day.
Tuesday.
More like DLC day.
I was there at Tuesday.
But
Lost my left leg at Tuesday.
I understand that it's like the loot boxes are the same, they are an extra layer. They're nothing that affects the game. Because again, you can't do COD with game changing loot.
No, you can't, but they could try.
And they probably did, in testing.
Yeah. I know, it's just the Black Mirroriness that we march towards, right? Where, like,
get a reward for watching other people open boxes.
Engage with other people. Yeah. Engaging with the system.
All they're doing is they're copying YouTube.
Yes, well, absolutely. Oh no, I mean, it's all linked, right? Like, it's like, there's a good article that everyone in the entire world has read now about, sort of algorithmically generated children's YouTube videos, which is off topic slightly. But the best line in that, which is something I think about a lot, particularly writing Hitman, is, it doesn't really matter if the algorithm's doing it, because eventually the success of the algorithm causes humans to mimic the algorithm. So it's almost like, it's not simply that this sort of, kind of mechanical, repetitive, kind of recursive search-led structure for what's successful makes machines make bad things. It makes human beings stupider and less creative as well. And then just a big bin, basically. This is the end of that course. But it's just such a crass kind of mercantile thing, right? Like, maybe we're of a generation, or I'm of a generation where I kind of want my crass mercantile entertainment to pretend like it's not. You know what I mean? For 5 seconds. Let's just lean into it. Maybe that's more honest this way.
It's the escapism thing. Well, yeah, and it probably is more honest in a way.
It does.
But I think there's like, I'm watching my son grow up into expectations of the way things are, of never owning anything and never, having to perform various kind of jump through various hoops in order to get the things that he wants that, I don't know. Is it strange to think that kind of we used to spend 60 quid on a Nintendo 64 cartridge, and
that was
which was a huge amount of money. Like
Yeah.
back in then, that was probably 120 quid in today's money, probably maybe more.
Yeah.
You know, was that bad? Was that exploitative? Probably. I don't know.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, the system is not necessarily weighted towards the people putting money into it, but there's something about I think it's the absence of embarrassment about these things. It's the changing of the acceptability window, I guess.
Yeah, with Call of Duty, to me, it feels like there is a team whose job it is to iterate on getting people to spend money on things like loot boxes, you know, the sort of monetization stuff, and they have taken the next logical step and frankly done a really good job of presenting that. Like, it's a beautiful animation where the stuff pops out and it manages to look both like UI and also like it exists in the world. And they were just, you know, tasked with that job of making it better and more engaging and whatever. And then the team tasked with theming this game to World War II and making a World War II game and being like true to that fantasy. Apparently, like, it's got really good reviews. People were really loving it. The campaign and stuff. And that team, you know, also put a load of effort and skill and work into making that theme, to selling that theme and making it feel convincing and, in some cases, I think terrifying in the campaign. And just never the twain will meet. Like, I don't think there was a team that was like, make sure these two things work seamlessly together and don't interfere with each other. There
must have been some arguments. But we'll talk about COD campaign later, but
and it is just the way things are. There's a sense of, it's like trying to kind of maintain kind of artistic credibility or say something or make something worthwhile in that context is possible. It's just like trying to put on a play in a Vegas casino, right? You're just surrounded by trappings of a completely different approach to the audience. And that will also influence the kind of audience you get. So I wonder at what point, cause we should talk about the COD campaign, cause I know you've been playing some of it, Alex. We should talk about it now, but you know, it's ultimately, you've got to, I think, you know, them having more sophisticated writing, more sophisticated sort of, you know,
well, their solution is to just completely draw a line between them. Like, you go to the main menu and it is, you know, 3 options, you know, campaign, Nazi zombies, and multiplayer, you know.
Yeah,
so,
but you see what I mean about, like, who is, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the audience does exist that perfectly overlaps in terms of comfort between all 3 of those things. And I suspect it's always been the case that most people who buy COD buy it for like a certain part of the experience and not others. But it is weird, right? Like, maybe I think maybe I'm just wrong about this, and I think maybe games are destined to be a sort of pastiche of multiple different forms of culture all at the same time, both tonally and in terms of content. But it is weird to me that you'd have writers and sort of game cinematographers, you know, people kind of planning the kind of narrative and cinematic arc of a single player campaign, maybe taking that sort of stuff seriously, maybe trying to bring in more historical themes or tell a more human story about this event than Call of Duty has in the past, that kind of thing. Meanwhile, in the same studio, there's the guy trying to get the Normandy Beach DLC crate to explode in a way that, you know, encourages
like a real shell.
Encourages someone to pop another coin in the machine. It's such a strange thing. It's like any time a good film has aggressive product placement in it. It's that feeling, but like 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think whether it works or not will be in, you know, whether it's audiences who will experience it, you know, hundreds of times, whether it puts them off, and they'll see in their numbers, you know, sort of the effects.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, you know, the whole idea of doing any kind of multiplayer game in set, you know, is one half of the team playing kind of German soldiers and the other half of the team being allied and in real places and them all magically coming back to life. I think that there is already a layer of insane artifice over the top of it already, and adding another one, you know, ultimately it's new and therefore we're reminded of all the weirdness, but actually, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree. I mean, should we do some?
Yeah, we should. You know, it's what you've been playing, right, Alex? Like, it's one of the things you've been playing.
So I haven't played any of the multiplayer at all. So I just went to option 1 on the menu. So I've not seen anything else because it does silo its different faces off so much. I don't think that it's I think that the whole thing of it being a sensitive and human portrayal of experience is bullshit.
Sorry.
But like, I think they've done a very good job of kind of trying, getting that sense across. So I went on holiday this year in the summer to Normandy, and we went to the beach that's in it, Omaha Beach, which is just an amazing place. Like, it's just this beautiful, long, sandy beach with dunes, and in the dunes are all these, bunkers are still there, with kind of grass and sand kind of going inside them. And you can go inside some of the bunkers and, gun emplacements and kind of, you can just see the trench kind of, ditches still. And in some of the bunkers, there are shell holes where all the reinforcing kind of, steel is kind of springing out of these holes in the concrete. It's sort of like a sort of, bird's nest kind of bits of torn steel. It's quiet and beautiful, and it's incredibly difficult to imagine, even with that stuff there, that what happened on the beaches. And so, and I played, what have I played? I've played Medal of Honor games, and I've done that beach landing quite a few times, and I've seen it on films quite a few times. And it's really strange to play yet another portrayal of it. And it's definitely bouncing off the Spielberg, Saving Private Ryan rendition.
That was what started it in games, right?
Pretty much,
Private
yeah.
Ryan
I'd say,
is
yeah.
the reason every World War II shooter, and there were lots of them,
Yeah.
had a Omaha Beach landing.
And it's a great thing for a game, because it's so contained, like you get to do a bit of kind of the sense of being in a large battle, but all players' attention is straight ahead. Nobody has to walk in any other direction, and that you don't, and you can control their action by just killing them with a shell if they go off piste. And you've kind of got this sort of amazing pacing of coming off the thing. You can dip them into the water if you like, or you can just open the thing and they can go out the front, however you want to stage it. And then you've got the pacing of walking out the beach, and then you've got some trench warfare when you get to the top of the thing. It's an incredible proposition for games, but it's so strange to play it again. It's the same, it's exactly the same. You've done it so many times, seen it rendered so, probably not so beautifully, but it kind of has that problem for me where, on one hand, I've seen it so many times that I'm looking through the drama and sort of seeing all the weirdnesses. And on the other hand, it looks so good that often whenever anything looks odd, it really sticks out, so it didn't really work for me on that kind of visceral kind of, that's a terrible word. That's the worst word.
You just used the worst word, other than smorgasbord.
Or brand.
We're just,
or Splunkyverse.
But we're rolling. We've got to go back. But it didn't get the gut punch for me. But then you're in it. Then you're shooting the guys and you're dying instantly, and you're shooting the guys and you kind of go moving on, and you've got the men shouting at you. I can't remember what my surname is, but it was being shouted at me many times. And, so while we were on holiday, I read a book which was about German memories, a set of interviews with Germans who are on the beaches then, and so in fact, they were very low staffed, all of these places, and mostly with invalids who had been on other fronts and been injured, or the old and that kind of thing. They were like not the hottest kind of soldiers, and they were all shitting themselves. Like, they were just terrified. And then you play this game, and there are billions of them. I've shot a lot of Germans now, and, and obviously they're being portrayed as being kind of super bad. And, you get a few letters to read, and a few of them are saying, "Oh, mother, I can't wait to see you when I come back home." But most of them is like kind of a bit evil, because they're sort of attacking your friends. And there are these, there's this device in the game where occasionally you'll come across a German soldier attacking one of your buds, and if you shoot them, you'll get a bonus to some abilities that your squad mates have.
Oh my god, really?
It's very, very mechanical. Yeah. So one of your squaddies, if you're nearby, will throw you health packs, because there's no recharging health in this one.
Oh.
You have to use health packs, and but they're very liberal with it. So you kind of, just like you did in the war, you kind of back in the game.
You Far Cry yourself and nearly feel bad.
Another one gives you some binoculars, and that will mark out enemies.
He just lets you borrow his binoculars.
Giving you
Does the guy attacking him have some binoculars and drops them when he kills him?
And there's another one that will call down a mortar strike.
So if you don't save them, you just kind of move on with the game?
They don't get leveled up. Your buds don't get leveled up.
So hang on, do they die if you don't save them?
Well, curiously, they're not your buds that you're saving.
Oh.
So maybe some sort of karmic system? I don't know.
So
This is
you
a
have to
strange idea.
demonstrate to your buds how much
You're a
you
nice guy.
respect your allies
Other
in general.
Possible buds.
Yeah, exactly.
Potential.
You have to demonstrate your commitment to buds in order.
Motivates your buds to improve themselves with binoculars.
But like this, but then, I've been on a Jeep, like driven a Jeep very, very fast through about 100 different German kind of little things in order to get to a town. And then I jumped out of the Jeep and then shot even more. At the start of one of the levels, a plane sort of crashes, like comes down, trailing smoke, this like super Hollywood, I don't think that it feels totally Call of Duty. I mean, it might not be Black Ops kind of insane kind of, and it's telling things straight, as in, you're not doing kind of covert things. Well, I haven't done any. I think it's quite a long game, apparently. I think the campaign's like 10 or 12 hours or something, apparently. So I've maybe played a third of that so far, but I haven't done any covert things, with super SAS style things.
That's what I was going to ask, because here there's a mission where you're a French resistance fighter who's infiltrating a stronghold.
Right.
And it sounded really cool in principle. And so I was actually thinking about getting it just for that mission. But an important question is, how far into the game is that? And I guess
It's a little way, I think.
It's not early enough.
But, and that Call of Duty thing where you wonder whether things keep respawning because you haven't hit the trigger point and that thing. I still don't know. Like I haven't felt that yet. Sometimes
is this an infinite Germans room, or is it a finite Germans room?
I think it might be finite Germans, but I'm not totally sure still. But it's it's incredibly made.
That book of German letters from World War II, it's like, well, there are infinite of us. So.
I think we've got this one.
That'd be a useful narrative clue.
I actually spawned on D-Day because nobody walked over the invisible line, which made me not exist.
But it's, I was more comfortable with Call of Duty when it was infinite warfare rather than infinite Germans.
Good lie.
Because it's just, because, it can revel in its codness. Whereas now, and obviously this is where Call of Duty came from. But then, maybe it's because I was younger, and maybe because I didn't have other things to contrast it with, but it always felt somewhat respectful, like that it was, you were never a character, like you weren't given a character, but in this one you're quite a square-jawed American boy, and you've got your sort of motley buds, you've got the kind of streetwise buds.
You have
got
18.
like this, yeah.
You have
motley
one
buds
18.
of May.
Yeah. And, but in the past you were like a complete squaddy, and the concept of it was that, because the mouse over and you see their name thing was saying, you are one of all these faceless soldiers, and as you're running over the top in waves, you're all people, and you will die and you'll respawn, and there's kind of a message, and in between of those you get a little quote about war.
Yeah.
And that feeling isn't there in here.
I think there's a lot, I feel like there's a lot of things going on at once here, including, those first Call of Duty version or Medal of Honor versions of D-Day were done at a time as well when that kind of scale of cinematic presentation in a shooter was relatively new, like a couple of years old rather than multiple decades old as it is now. And because you can go back today and look at something like Half-Life 1, which you could talk about pioneering scripted sequences and those kind of cinematic moments. And it doesn't look subtle now, but at the time it was relatively subtle and tonally diverse compared to a lot of shooters, right? And that was an era where games were putting you less and less at the center of the game as the player, right? Like Half-Life 1 gave you the sense that all this stuff was happening around you and you were just one survivor in the middle of this crisis. Half-Life 2 made you feel like a much smaller piece initially, particularly in a huge thing that felt like a city. Those D-Day games were not Wolfenstein, right? Like there was a huge distance that games had traveled to go from like your magic BJ Blazkowicz shooting his way out of castle Nazis and to you're an anonymous soldier on Normandy Beach and we can make it look massive. All of those things have been done now. Like, it's just been done. We're much more aware, particularly maybe as critics, of what games can do. So if they go back and do the same thing they were doing 20 years ago, or 20 years ago, 15 years ago, then it's not necessarily going to get you again, right? It's not a new step for the medium of first-person shooter design at all, right? It's an experience you've, like, absolutely had before. So the lack of novelty, I suppose, is part of it, regardless of whatever you might think about sensitivities historically, etc.
It's true. But on the other hand, so we're in the world then, like games are now in the world of having to live on their own merits in the way that film has to,
Yes.
So in a film, you're still seeing the same techniques, but sometimes they're wielded with, better than others. And I think that's where games are now, actually. You can do that. I think you can, with all of the technology and kind of whatever that COD has to call on now. I think that you could make moving experiences with all the same pieces, I think. But yeah.
I think it's healthy, actually. I think games should not simply be assessed on novelty. Yeah. So, per the conversation we were having earlier, like I think particularly at this scale of game development, it should be about how effective it is as an experience, not simply that you haven't seen it before. And because I think after Saving Private Ryan, if you didn't talk about film, I think it was harder for people to make successful war films because they had to do something more impressive and impactful than that, right?
And Band of Brothers, like things like that, managed to do it in that same universe.
Yeah, and then I suppose this year's something like Dunkirk would be kind of similar. Like the standards go up when someone succeeds, I suppose. Yeah. But that's not to say that film doesn't go back and replay the hits.
Which is why I wanted to play it, like, because I wanted to see. So, like, what do you do know that now? What can we do? Let's see, in this, AAA field, what has this team decided that people want? And it's interesting that they were so keen to go, this is a sensitive story, well researched and that kind of thing.
But they always did that back in the day as well, right?
They did, yeah.
Every Brothers in Arms, Band of Brothers, Medal of Honor, Band of Brothers wasn't a game. You know what I mean? Every Men of Something World War II game had their man on the press tour who was like, this is our real military consultant. Like that's a tale as old as time, right?
Yeah.
I wonder like, it'd be interesting, like, if this is a thing, like, is there an audience that genuinely missed that experience? Like, for whom this is playing the hits, right?
Like, this is, what has it been, 10 years, 15 years since that?
15, I think.
Since the big World War II games? Like, the probably last one was World at War.
COD 4 was 11 years ago.
Yeah. So
yes.
You're talking about a lot of Call of Duty players, like in their 20s, for whom who've never played.
Well, I mean, I loved those games, right? Like I was wowed by them. I was in my, I guess I would have been 14, 15. So I was the perfect age to be wowed by them, and I was, but I don't feel nostalgic for that. I don't know if that's just me, and that's not got nothing to do with my changing sense of what's appropriate or not in games. It's just like I think like you, Alex, like I've seen it, so I don't necessarily I'm not going to be wowed by a new Omaha Beach sequence. I'm quite curious to play it now, actually, because it does sound interesting from that point of view. But I wonder to what extent is this playing the hits for an audience that has aged 15 years since they last had this experience? And to what extent Is it bringing that experience to a new generation of younger Call of Duty
players? I don't have
players?
the feeling it's trying to be nostalgic at all.
Right.
I don't think it's saying, oh, remember when? It's just going, here's an opportunity to show a guy with his face blown off.
I think they waited for all the people who are bored of World War II to die or grow up out of games. Then they released a new World War II one. Well, those guys are sick of World War II, but who cares about them? Right?
They wouldn't have.
They're so old, they're dead now.
I wonder if that's genuinely it. That like 15 years in game time is like an entire generation of players.
And you can switch it around. I don't know, recharging health, get rid of that, we're back to health packs. And it's
going to seem like an innovation. People are going to be like, wow, they've invented this thing.
It's amazing. You walk around, right, and you pick stuff up off the floor and it heals you.
You just eat a big chicken. You just eat a big chicken. You don't have to hide until the jam goes away. You just eat the chicken.
I like that.
It's way better.
I like that still in Wolfenstein 2, by the way.
Is, yeah.
You eat chicken dinners to gain health.
And kids these days, they just love chicken. They just love chicken dinners.
Chicken nugs.
Yeah, I mean, it's, that's kind of interesting in and of itself, I guess, that sounds super negative. I'd like them to have done a good COD, by all means. It's just.
I don't think it's a bad COD. I quite like the Infi COD, and I quite like this one so far. But I do, I can only play it for about half an hour before I get really, really tired.
I think there's definitely also an element of like, this is the mainstream shooter, right? This is like nothing, you can't get any closer to mainstream games than this. And so it will be played by millions of people who will play nothing else this year other than FIFA. Or Madden, depending on where you are. Like, and that's just a thing. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. So I suppose all of its creative scope has to exist in that context, right? It's like running BBC News or something.
Running Activision.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like running the BBC News.
Yeah. So yeah, but nonetheless, been well received, so maybe it goes more interesting places later in the campaign.
I don't know why people are. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I do find it odd that COD is kind of review proof, even, obviously it's review proof in the sense that its sales and its reviews aren't particularly kind of linked, but also you get reviews and people they kind of go, it's COD. It's become its own thing. Like, you can only criticize it with its own sphere. Like, as a COD game, it's like, it's above the average COD or below the average COD. You don't say, this COD game, compared to all other first person shooters.
I wonder if there's somewhat of a perception of that, however, because I remember like one of the most recurring comedy comments things we would have on PC Gamer was like every time any game got a review score that was like out of whack with a particular section of the comment base's expectations, lower or higher, there'd be some people who came along and went, yeah, what do you expect? These are the guys that give Call of Duty 90 every single time. And PC Gamer hadn't given Call of Duty 90 ever. Like, it'd been 60s and maybe low 70s for every single game, which I think is about right for Call of Duty traditionally. Like, they're always just like, they're all right. Yeah. Like, but it didn't matter because the perception was that COD always did well. Yeah. And it was completely false. And you could always just roll out, well, here are the last 5 scores and they're all in the 50s or 60s or 70s. And it wouldn't matter. That perception just rolls on and on and on and on. So I would have to check the actual, basically I don't want to fall into the trap of assuming that the games press has lost it for COD because I know that that's just a rumor.
But it's just, the benchmark for COD is COD.
Yes. It's like, boy, they did it again.
They did it on the COD.
Yeah. Yeah. Much like the fish. Just has to be sufficient.
Yeah. Quite a good analogy.
But what if you like haddock?
That's very similar, really. Haddock is the battlefield of fishes. Quite similar to COD. There are differences, but they're not that important.
What have you been playing?
I am still playing Assassin's Creed Oranges, which I'm still really enjoying. Yeah, I'm level 25 now, which feels like I've probably played it for about 25 hours. I don't know if there's a 1-to-1 between levels and hours, but...
Yeah, the leveling slows down.
Yeah, I've noticed that, actually.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it's very much dependent on whether you're doing the main quests. The main quests give you huge XP and nothing else really does. So I'm actually focusing on it at the moment because I'm starting to realize how much game there is that I haven't seen any of. Like, I just saw an elephant yesterday for the first time.
What? There are elephants?
I was flying, as an eagle, obviously, which is how I spend 90% of my time. And I was flying off, I encountered like a little bit of snow, and I was like, whoa, there's snow. And then as I was flying up really, really high, I was looking over the vista. I could see some kind of white mountains in the distance. I thought, are those snowy mountains? I'm going to fly over and find out. So I just flew for like 25 minutes. And as I got closer, I realized it's actually not snow. It's like a white desert, just a very like, much paler sand. Actually that was kind of in a lot of ways more interesting than it being snowy mountains, because I've seen snowy mountains everywhere, and this is just a different type of desert that I've never seen in a game before. And I was flying towards like a tower type thing that was like the size of it were moving, and for all the world it looked like, have you ever seen like at car dealerships, they'll have those mascots that inflate with the wind and they flap their arms around? They look like a giant bear mascot that was flapping in the wind. They had these two like pudgy arms that were flapping to the sides. Like, what the hell? What could possibly be in ancient Egypt that would look anything like that isn't an inflatable mascot? So I had to fly over to see what this car dealership was. And as I got closer, I could see like, rather than stubby arms, it was more like circles that were flapping at the side, but they're still halfway down this kind of rectangular object, really. And then it wasn't until I was right up upon it that I realized, fucking hell, it's an elephant. It's an elephant with a huge thing on its back.
Like a
palanquin
carrier thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's people inside it or something, but it's very tall and not like a platform that you see people standing on. It's like contained. And I still don't know what it is. He's in the middle of an arena and there's nothing else around, and he's just flapping his ears, and I'm the eagle, so I can't really interact with him in any way. I just kind of look at him and then fly away again. But I keep having moments like that where I'm just like, oh my God, there's that waiting for me somewhere, and I'm nowhere close to...
I don't know. This story it's got to be almost never ending to get all around this entire map.
It's funny because, it does a good...
I just realized there's lots of blank space on my targets page, and it's like, oh,
I was just going to say that. Like, you start off with these 4 targets, and you, like, your first job, really soon after you start the game, just do a brief tutorial, then you're like, go and kill this guy, who's one of your 4 targets. And you're like, holy shit, I can just do that? And I just did it. And I'm like, that's 1 of 4. I'm nearly done. And then, of course, as you correctly notice, those 4 targets are at the bottom of a large page that is otherwise blank, and you might, guess where it's going with this. So, I mean, it also seems like I haven't really been skipping cutscenes much. I've been watching most of it. It's pretty, passable, the plot. I mean, that's faint praise, but in video games, that's quite high praise for me.
You not skipping the cutscenes is actually quite high praise.
Yeah.
I look at my phone during the cutscenes.
Yeah, I'm not saying I pay 100% attention, but I haven't grasped any overarching plot beyond, oh, it's these 4 guys are corrupt and evil and destroying Egypt. Kill them all. And then, oh no, wait, there's these other 4. We should kill those as well.
There's a thing with Cleopatra and the and stuff going on.
She also wants them dead. It's the arc I've detected is that, initially I was getting revenge for my son, and now I'm still, Bayek is still blaming these people for his son's death, still sees them as part of the conspiracy type thing. But the primary reason I'm killing them really is because they're corrupting influences on Egypt, and I'm just trying to save Egypt or whatever. Anyway, there is a special type of quest that's marked on your map with a blue exclam, and it keeps telling you, oh, these time limited things, you should do them every day. And
from the little boy in the markets.
Yeah. You've done one of those?
Done a couple of those? Yeah. They're like daily quest things.
What kind of level was it for you? Was it above your level?
Around my level.
Okay. So
the 2 of them. One of them was a little bit harder than the other, and I had to kind of that's right. I died on one of them, and I still had the quest, and it had moved the object of the quest to a different camp that was much easier.
Huh, interesting. So yeah, I didn't know what these were exactly, and I hadn't done them at all in 25 hours, so I decided I'll check this out. And I just got to actually an area that was I was at the bottom of its level range. You know, each area has a level range for like,
maybe it's set
this was 25 to 28 or something, right. And I'm 25. So, I finally went to the blue marker, and sure enough, there's a little kid sitting there, and, he will sell you basically a loot box. Like there's a mystery weapon you can buy from him, or you can buy some resources.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that, but he gives you a quest as well.
And you get the loot box for that.
Okay. That's what the reward is.
So
I couldn't remember what the reward was.
Basically, it's a guaranteed good weapon. But
the quest, the level of it, just like was a skull. And, it was a level 33 or 32 quest, like 7 levels above me.
That's crazy.
And I thought I'm going to do it because the quest was retrieve this missing worker. I didn't know what the story context for this was, whether there even is one, but I thought I've actually a couple of times I've gone off on my own and just ridden a horse through a new area that's way above my level and just tried to avoid all predators and enemies and stuff. And I really like that. It's a kind of a different experience to the rest of the game. So I was like, I'm going to see if I can do this mission. Like, cause it's at times a minor complaint I'd have about the game is that it's sort of leading you to each area. It's telling you where to go at each time. When you're 25, you go to the level 25 area. When you're 30, you go to the 30 area, and you're doing these quests that are always around your level. You are progressing, but it kind of almost cancels out because you're always, you're fighting people who are at the same level as you. And I thought, well, that's not a fair criticism if I'm intentionally never going to the higher level places. And I've been to very high level places, and I've been to very low level places, but I know I've been to somewhere that's like just a bit higher than me. Like, the enemies are going to be very difficult, but not impossible to kill them. When I'm off in like level 40 areas, there is literally no way I can kill these enemies. Mm-hmm. Nothing I do makes any difference to their health bar.
Yeah, it's just,
So I thought I'd give it a go. And, the journey was awesome. It was like 2 kilometers away, so a really long journey, and just kind of like autopiloted for most of it. And then as I got closer, the area it was in, it was kind of this bay that's just all fortresses. Like, there was no friendly civilization. Everywhere was a hostile area, which obviously complicated my job a bit. But inland a bit, it kind of went up into these rocky outcroppings. And so I was trying to like skirt around the forts and not get close enough that I needed to stealth or anything, still on my horse. And went into kind of I guess it's kind of a mesa, and found my target, which was, I actually had to sneak past a fort. I couldn't find a good way to completely avoid it, so I had to get off my horse and swim in the water. And there was a boat in the dock, and there was enemies on the boat, so I had to swim really close to the boat so they wouldn't get line of sight, and then go underwater as soon as I could. And then came up this little beach with a dusty kind of flat area next to some rocks, and that's where my target was. And it was a corpse surrounded by hyenas, all of which were skull level. And this made things interesting because I did this mission because I thought I probably won't have to kill anything. I'm just going to retrieve somebody. So as long as I'm not actually tasked with killing someone here, it doesn't matter that I can't do any damage to them.
Every quest Assassin's Creed Origins involves fighting.
So at first I thought, oh shit, it's like 6 hyenas. I really can't take these guys on. Maybe I just can't do this. And I thought, well, no, I should engage with this. Like, this is a different kind of challenge. The thing I'm learning recently is that, like, playing at different difficulties is just different experiences. And yes, you're less likely to succeed, but it doesn't have to be a case of like, oh, this is hell, or no, I just refuse to do this. It can be interesting just to engage with it and just see like, what will happen? There's no penalty for death anyway. So, I thought I might as well try and see if I can puzzle this out. Like, maybe this is not a combat challenge. This is like a puzzle challenge now. So can I get these dogs away from the body? And I kind of I was about to snipe them from a distance to see, I could do some damage to them. If I get like a stealth headshot on one of them, it would do like a 1/5 of their health bar, maybe.
Really that much? That's pretty good, actually. Because,
so that's what I mean about like, this is weird, not impossible.
Because the numbers in their health bars is pretty much the same between levels, but your damage goes stratospherically down.
Yeah, I do like 600 damage per shot or something with a stealth bow, but I only do 100 to these guys for some reason. So I was about to do that, and then I realized, well, they're going to come at me, and I maybe can run away, but wouldn't it be smarter to go up onto the higher, like on top of these rocks? Because coyotes can't climb, or hyenas. I actually don't know which one they are. Dog-like things. I'm pretty sure they can't climb rocks, so if I was on top of one of these things, for sure I could do it. And looking at the range, I realized I would be just out of range if I was on top of these top of these rocks. So, but I can go to the bottom of those rocks and get close enough to be in range, and then if they do come for me, I can climb the rocks and then get away. So I did that and started aiming sniper shots. You can steer sniper arrows in the air, which is hilarious.
Like the Redeemer from
yeah, it is the Redeemer bow. And I shot one, and he was agitated by this, understandably, and then he just kind of like looked around and actually couldn't see me, and then just kind of ran in the opposite direction, and like 4 of the hyenas went with him. So all but one of them abandoned the body. I was like, holy shit, this is perfect. Now there's just this one. And so I couldn't really see a way to like do anything different to this one, so I shot at him. And he did run towards me. But I managed to like scale the rock and hide from him, and then kind of circle around, and he didn't go directly back to the body, he kind of went somewhere else. So I was able to sneak up to the body, get to it, And the thing I was excited about was like, I'm going to get to this body, pick it up, and then I've got to carry it 2 kilometers back, and that's going to be an amazing journey. I got to the body, and it was just had an interact prompt, and I pressed that, and it's like, Bayek's like, oh, he's dead. I must report this to my mission giver. I'm like, oh, come on. I could have told you that half an hour ago.
But your ego could have told you that.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought he was sleeping near some good dogs, but they weren't good dogs at all.
So I was so disappointed by this that I thought, fuck it, I'm going to do the quest I thought this was. You guys were talking last week about or whenever, about Destiny raids that don't exist, the ones you make up in your head when you don't know the rules. And I was like, this quest that I had in my head is way cooler than the one you've given me. I'm going to take this fucking body all the way back to the mission giver. And so I picked him up and I scampered off, with him over my shoulder, hoping to get out before the coyotes returned, or hyenas, the ambiguous dogs.
Chihuahuas.
Yeah, it was mostly chihuahuas, skull level chihuahuas. And instead of going back the way I came through the water and stuff, obviously that'd be difficult with a body. I went up through the rocks and took the high road over the fortresses and stuff. The fortresses were between me and the quest giver. But I kind of decided to go all the way around and find a longer route and get past them. And I realized if I could just get to the water, I could load this body onto the boat and then sail the boat almost all the way to my quest giver, because he was in Memphis and, that's canal based. And so I can get pretty close to that. And it's much easier to avoid enemies on water as well. The only problem was I was like, very high up on this ridge, and there's a lot of kind of climbing to be done between me and the coast, and taking the body with me was kind of awkward. And I realized you can load bodies onto your horse, and you can also summon your horse. So I thought I'll put him on my horse, then I'll climb down, and then I'll summon my horse. And I thought, like, no real reason to do that till I'm actually at the coast, because I don't need the body till then. So I climbed all the way down the rocks, snuck towards the coast. Towards the coast, there was a...
Did the summoning of a horse work?
Well, wait to find out. Get to the coast and there's just something on fire by the coast. There's just like a flaming mass and a guard standing next to it. And he's a skull level guard. And I'm like, okay, this is the only spot I can get to a boat. But he's awfully close. I don't really like that. And so I tried to sneak past him and, got to the coast. And at that point got attacked by a crocodile. And I'm like, fuck, run inland straight past the skull level guard. Kind of hoping
was the crocodile also skull?
Yeah. In high level areas, everything that's hostile is high level. So sprinted away from him, managed to outrun the crocodile and hide inland. And then, I could see the silhouettes of the skull level guard and the crocodile fighting. And then, eventually the crocodile silhouette vanishes, and I thought, great, that's sorted. Went back to there, and there's another flaming mass next to him, and I realized he's like a flame archer. He's this badass skull level flame archer who just burns crocodiles for a living. Like, that's what the first burning mass was. He just hunts crocodiles. And unfortunately he saw me. And so I just couldn't find a way to get away from him, so I actually took him on. He was kind of weakened from the fight a little bit. And my arrows didn't do much to him, but actually in close combat, I seem to have a really good axe, because I can do a lot more damage in close combat than I can almost any other way. And I just about managed to win the fight. Like, he's an archer and I'm melee, which usually is an advantage, but he's so much higher level that he keeps running off, setting fire to me with his arrows and stuff. I defeated him. And so finally I got clear access to the boat. I call my, horse, and he arrives with nothing on his back.
You had one job.
For fuck's sake, yeah. You had one job, man. Do you know what I've been through? All you had to do was carry the body here. Admittedly, I was kind of asking the horse to follow a path that he couldn't have followed. I'm climbing the stuff because the horse can't come with me, and then I'm summoning the horse on the other end, which I know works because it will just teleport the horse to you if it needs to. It was a bit of a cheesy tactic.
I think that what you did there is expose one of the physics elements of teleportation.
Yes,
this is exactly Heat's signature.
This is your own
teleportation logic.
This is poetic justice. This is just the kind of bullshit I do to players. So I was still so obsessed with this quest that I had in my head, of this idea of transporting this body all across the thing. I thought, this is kind of bullshit that it hasn't given me the body. Or at least if I'd known it wasn't going to do that, I wouldn't have used this tactic and I would have done something else. I should have the body by now. And it's not like I need the body for the quest anyway. The reason I was transporting it was not to fulfill the quest, it was to fulfill the quest in my head. So I thought, fuck it, I'm going to transport a body back. I just killed this guy. So now this is my objective. I'm transporting him back to the quest giver. And so I picked up his body and loaded it onto a boat, and that works. And then you can steer the boat, and I sailed it all the way back to Memphis and
Dumped a stranger's body.
Picked it up off the boat, ran into Memphis, found the quest giver. By the way, it was nighttime now.
Was it this little boy?
Yep.
So what you're saying is that you brought back a random corpse.
It was nighttime now, and actually the quest had expired, so the quest wasn't even valid anymore. You have one day to do this, and I'd taken so long that it was no longer valid. So then I find the little boy in town with the body of an unrelated person. He didn't ask me for a body. I didn't get the body. And also the quest he gave me is now invalid. And then I just kind of walk up to him and just dump the body on his rug where he sells his wares. And he's sitting down at the time, and he just stands up, looks at me and backs off. And I knew I'd done like a completely bizarre thing. And as I was doing it, you hear these civilians always commenting. I've carried a body a long way at this point, so I'm used to civilians saying, "Oh, something's going on. So there's something wrong."
Something's going on.
And they were, as they're doing that, I realized like some of these people are guards. And then the guards just started attacking me and firing arrows at me and stuff. Yeah, because I guess it was a guard that I delivered.
You were holding a dead guard, yeah.
Yeah, so me dumping this unrelated dead body in front of a child and terrifying him, turns out a crime. And so I just had to run away like on a hail of arrows, like, fuck. But technically I kind of did the quest in my head that I made up for myself.
But failed every objective of the game.
Yeah, in many different ways.
Oh, oranges. I've been enjoying it too.
Yeah, I'd like to play it. I'd like to play it.
But it is mental.
Those stories have made me want to play it.
Yeah.
Good for them though, making an Assassin's Creed that
apparently it's done.
What I'm wondering is whether the elephants, are they just Far Cry elephants? Because there's so much Far Cry in this game.
Well, all the animals made in the same place.
They've got an animal. They've got the animal
Ubisoft
studio.
Shanghai. Ubisoft Shanghai is the Singapore is water, which is why I asked you.
Singapore is water.
Yeah, because I asked the Singapore men when I was there, like, now I've talked to them about the water, and I got to see the water. And it's really nice water. I saw they're like water sandboxes, which is the bad word for that.
You've got a water box.
Yeah. And then I went to Shanghai and met the animal people. Not animal people, like the people what do the animals. There's like a big Far Cry elephant on the wall, because it is like,
right.
It's what they've done.
Yeah, it's what they've done. It's what they do. They make them bad dogs.
So when you say water, do they do all of the water stuff, or is it, yeah?
Yeah, they do all the water tech.
They did sort of, I did play a bit where they'd sort of shoehorned, ship combat directly from 4.
Yeah. They do all of the tech and some of the design for that sort of thing. And they did one entire area, I think, because that's one of the ways they do it now, is they give sections of the world to different Ubisoft studios. So Singapore, is it Fayum is an area in the game?
Yep.
Yeah, that's all Singapore.
Where's that?
That's right around where I am, actually. That's the area I've just got to that's about at my level. I'm kind of at the low end of that level scale. And then it took me a bit beyond that into the next level up.
I hate the levels. Oh, I hate it.
Really?
Yeah, they've got this amazing device, which was, the fact that you're in the Animus, so they can just literally turn off bits of the world, and you kind of go, oh, fair enough. And once you get over that kind of hump of kind of like, I can't go through this invisible wall or this digital wall thing, you kind of just think, okay, fine, that's just something I can't do. Whereas this, it's sort of like it's porous and you can go into it, but you'll get fucked for it. It's sort of like,
that's what I like about it. Is like it's it's a stealth game.
It's true, but it's sort of like it does so much work on kind of trying to make this world, and then suddenly, an identical guard, you do no damage to. That kills you in one blow.
I wish the one tweak I'd like is I've really specialised in upgrading my blade damage. You can upgrade it, from 0 to maxed out from the start of the game, basically. As soon as you get access to resources, if you get enough of those resources, you can just pump it into that.
Resources they're like, it takes a while before they become like spurious jewel, which you only find in certain places. It's like, it's pretty common materials, aren't they?
Yeah, so I did that and I maxed out my blade, but I still, if something's like 7 levels higher than me, then a stealth attack on it will do, like I say, like a fifth of its health bar. It's nowhere close to killing it, which just means that's not viable. I think it would be way more interesting if in a high level area, normal combat is not going to work, but if I can get the jump on them, I can still take them out.
What I really like is that you can wear nice clothes, right? You wear the clothes that you want, but then you also, the things you upgrade are reflected on top of the clothes. It's really nice. So you feel your clothes change through the game, but they're the state. You can have the same clothes all the way through, so you don't have to change, like, just because they're higher level or whatever. It's like, it's really nice little thing, but you also get that sense of progression and like, oh, my little satchel has got a nice little blue little things on it now.
Lovely.
Nice.
Are you playing on console?
No, PC.
So I think they're going to add this in an update now, but on console people have discovered you can get your hair back, your hair and your beard from the intro.
Really?
Like at some point early on in the game you shave both your beard and your hair, and it looks a lot more boring afterwards. Like he looks way cooler in the intro. And if you just hold down the triggers and press Y on the character select screen, you can get your beard.
Spontaneously grow your beard.
Yeah. Just toggle it on and off. But if you die, you lose it again.
Is that the only death penalty?
Yep.
Good. It's funny, you're talking about like, health packs are back because kids these days, they don't know, they want to change. It's kind of like interesting that like level scaling has gone away.
Yeah.
Like, hey kids, you might remember this granddad game called Morrowind. Yeah. What if Assassin's Creed was like that?
I was thinking about Morrowind actually, and the one thing I miss is that, sneaking into a higher level area and stealing something, you just get a normal like jewel or a normal loot. If you get a weapon, it's your level. So they have level scaled the loot. And I wish, I understand why they don't want to incentivize it, but the thing I miss from Morrowind is like, if you snuck into a camp full of like deadly guards and you stole something from their shelf, you were set for life. The money that thing was worth would be more than any shopkeeper in the world can give you. And you could trade for everything they own, plus all of their money for this like one thing you stole from the Dren plantation.
Yeah, I suppose scaling kind of has to work both ways, right? Like, if you're not going to scale the enemies, then shouldn't scale the rewards. Yeah. And still okay though.
Mm-hmm.
What you
the
play?
hottest take.
It's okay.
I like to land these things on a real fucking, it's like
neutral. We don't know, or it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
What you play, Chris?
So I have been playing a little bit of a game called Dota 2.
Did that just come out?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it just came out again in the form of Dota 7.07 or something like that. We're on now.
Oh, classic.
Specifically, we mentioned it last week, the update, and I sort of rattled through what it included. I hadn't really played it properly yet. All I really want to do is talk briefly about Dota Turbo, which again we did mention, but I hadn't really played it.
Is it like Street Fighter?
Yes. Dota 2, Super Dota 2 Turbo Arcade Edition. It's a lot of new characters. No. It's basically, I described it on the pod last week as Heroes of the Storm mode, but that's not quite right, at all, actually. It's basically just speed Dota. And this is really interesting because, what they've done is they have, and it's not as simple as like, you get golden experience faster, so the games are shorter. Like, there are some quite significant feeling, mechanical changes. So, you can buy items anywhere. So you don't need to go to shops. So you no longer need a courier, which is actually more game changing than you think. And the more Dota you've played, the more different that feels. There are things that are just hard. Like I find myself, even though I played it a bit now, I still find myself going to the shop to buy a TP scroll when I need one. Cause like, oh God, I got to get back to base. As a support, you find yourself factoring in the time it's going to take to get wards delivered when you need wards rather than just being able to buy them and they appear in your inventory and you can place them immediately. If you want to remove a ward and you need to buy a specific sentry ward to find it, rather than having to factor in that time, you just buy it. So it's it's vastly streamlined. Towers are easier to take, ends quicker. Well, on paper it ends quicker. You get experience a lot faster. And that's really, it feels like a different game within the same mold, but there's a lot of stuff about it I really like. What I find really interesting is I can't tell whether it's an accessibility improvement or not. Genuinely. Like, I think it is I think it's an excellent way for people who maybe don't have time to play Dota all the time, but know Dota to play Dota in a way that takes away a lot of the kind of, commitment to a full Dota game.
So what is the match length now?
20, 25 minutes.
It's like halved.
It's halved to a third, I think. Yeah. But the interesting thing about it is, and I think it's a good way to learn a new character if you understand the fundamentals of the game already. what I'm really interested to figure out, because I was thinking about, when I was playing it, I was thinking about conversations we had many years ago now about, like, Tom, why you bounced off games like Dota in the first place, because of not just, because the length of these matches and the fact that you can't leave and the fact that you're locked into this thing, whether this is a way to whether I could tell people who don't like this game that I love so much, play this and you'll get some sense of it. And I'm actually really torn on that, because it's really, because it's like speed Dota, for me, it feels like it kind of relies on your understanding of the base game in order to kind of know what to do when
you're able to buy items on the field. That someone with lots of Dota knowledge would be able to
figure stuff out.
Reward from that, yeah.
Exactly. That said, I think simply by making the game shorter and less punishing to lose, and with fewer deeply strange things to learn, like career management and that kind of thing, it is probably easier. It is probably a way in if you're intimidated by the leap from Dota against bots to...
Is there health... Do you get health regen, or is that kind of boosted?
No, there's nothing like that. Nothing like that, aside from the fact that you level up faster and you get items faster, so you'll arrive at that sort of self-sustaining... Like, it really does fundamentally change the game, and Dota is so much of a numbers game and an economics game and a sort of systemsy kind of understanding game, that so much of like the logic and the theory and the interesting depth that goes into just the concept of the early game, for example, is built around the fact that at that stage in the game, people aren't going to necessarily have the mana available to do the kinds of things they'll have later in the game. So successful play at that level involves being very careful with how you both spend and in the time between fights regenerate your mana, and how you manage that is just one of many things you're doing. In Dota Turbo, you kind of don't have to worry about it very much, because 3 minutes in, every single person who needs them will have mana shoes, and there's mana for everybody. And that takes a lot of the pressure off. And actually having that pressure relieved is really nice, because it allows you to focus on just the mechanics of Dota. Like, I think it's a good way to learn a new character, particularly because you get your abilities really quickly, you level up quickly, you get to your item builds fast, and then it's just technical play. I appreciate that probably sounds pretty dry if you don't play Dota, but Dota is a game of macro and micro, like any strategy game. And the macro layer is so much less pronounced that it becomes a game of sort of fights and the broader strategic element, which is what it does have in common with Heroes of the Storm, which is likewise a game with a very simplified macro layer and a very, that puts a lot of emphasis on fighting and map mechanics. However, I know I like Heroes of the Storm, but Dota is so much better, like just top to bottom superior in every regard, in my opinion, that is just better, right? Like, I probably wouldn't go play HOTS now that this exists, because it takes the same amount of time, but there are so many more interesting mechanics in fights that you kind of get to the good stuff faster. And that's kind of interesting as well, because so there's now a talent system in Dota that has been since earlier in the year, where as you level up, you get to these sorts of like flat upgrades at like level 10, 15, 20, 25. And
similar to the ones you get in Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah, it was actually an idea that came the other way.
Yeah.
And some of those like level 25 upgrades for certain heroes are really interesting. But an average game of Dota is very likely, particularly if you play support like me a lot, you're probably not going to hit level 20 in the mass majority of games you play, let alone 25. In fact, traditionally, and it's interesting when you approach these games as someone who puts so much time into them, you get a kind of sense of like what makes a game special, like what makes a one match out of the thousands you've played stand out. And sometimes just being a game where you hit level 25 is one of them, because it doesn't happen very often. Games don't often go that long, and in some roles you'll do it all the time, and some you won't. But in this, like, I think you probably will hit 225 more often than not. So you're getting to play with the stuff that you don't normally get to play with, which is actually really fun. And this is such a dumb thing to say if you played literally any other video game ever, but it's kind of cool when you get access to all of the stuff, like, and you can just play with all of the things. And like, so the best thing about Turbo is it gets you to play with all of the toys faster in a way that fits into a much more manageable amount of time. However, the best game of Dota Turbo I have played took 45 minutes, which means it's like 2 hours in dog years, like in Dota years. Like, it was a really long game, and it was 4v5 for the majority of it.
On favoring you?
Yeah, my team lost someone, and we won, but it was literally one of those, like, you have to play your complete arse off like in every single fight, or this is doomed kind of games, particularly because a lot of the defensive mechanics have been toned down to encourage games to end. So that, a lot of the sort of comeback mechanics in terms of base defense are less pronounced in Turbo, so that when someone has got a crushing advantage, they just go and then they win. And managing to hold that off felt brilliant. But it did lead to a Dota length game, but a Dota Turbo speed, which was nuts because it meant that by the end of the game, everyone had every item you could possibly need. Everyone was level 25. And you suddenly had to account for every character's weird level 25 skills. And everyone, including the supports, had completely maxed out builds. And I'd not really played a game of Dota like that because it did come down at that point to pure mechanics, like pure mechanical decision making. Like, you fuck up, you're stacking your stuns once and your team, you're probably going to lose the game. And that was actually fucking cool. Like, that was really interesting. And like, and winning felt great. And it was like, I haven't lost a game of Dota Turbo yet, actually, which is fun. I think it's because it's just great to not be permanently underleveled. Is like, and yeah, it's really cool. It's probably the two new characters and stuff they've added are really fun. There's, and like we said last week, use mechanics that probably couldn't have existed prior to the break from Warcraft 3 Dota. But really, this is the big standout kind of success for me of the patch, I think, because it's, it's different. And I think Thomas, you that asked last week whether you think that there's a danger that this is so successful that it kills full Dota. I think about it, I think it's more and more of a good question because people are learning like, oh wow.
So has it been popular?
So it certainly doesn't take very long to find a game. It's hard to judge, I think. There's lots of people playing Dota, obviously, but, I don't know what proportion of them are playing Turbo at any given time. I've seen less toxicity, which is nice. I don't know if that could be purely coincidental. I suspect there's an element of it's Turbo, so fuck it. In fact, Pip wrote as much in an article she did for PC Gamer about the same thing. And it's Turbo, so fuck it is actually quite a healthy attitude. Like, I don't feel as guilty about picking characters I want to play, genuinely, like, which is interesting as well.
Although I'm sure as it matures out and everyone starts kind of, fitting into their little kind of niches and
I think
getting bitter about
it would be a real shame if it gained Turbo ranked. That would be a thing. Because I always disagree with the addition of ranked play to Dota anyway, because I thought it changed something fundamental about the way all pick or matchmaking felt. But yeah, this is one of the first, like, new things in Dota for ages that's made me regret that I don't do 3-lane highway anymore, because it feels like one of the things where you kind of really want to pick into the psychology of it. Because actually a lot of it, so some of it is just pure mechanical stuff, like things are faster and blah, 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 blah. But honestly, a lot of it exposes the sort of weight of guilt every good Dota player feels 90% of the time, and how refreshing it is to have it relieved. So, that layers from guilt about what character you're going to pick. Because if you're a team player, you will pick for the team, not for yourself. And you'll be contesting with people who will pick for themselves, and you have to pick around them. And that is dynamic. That is negative but inevitable dynamic one of the game. Other things are like courier use and, spending gold on yourself rather than spending it on the team and that kind of thing. And all these different layers of responsibility that stack up for players who are willing to take on those responsibilities, and get constantly kind of poked at and toppled by the players that don't give a fuck. And that is the dynamic. That's what creates that kind of negative feeling from Dota is selfishness versus selflessness and team play versus I just want to do this and fuck you. And having those stakes taken away and have it just be like, pick what you want, it's fine, Turbo, no one gives a shit. And also, doesn't matter because there's no courier and you're going to get shitloads of gold anyways, so don't worry about it. It actually feels real nice. So, I guess what I've learned in conclusion is you take loads of the kind of, like, sort of, needlessly hardcore things out of a game I genuinely love, and it somehow becomes more fun. And I'm not sure how I feel about that at all.
Dark implications.
Yeah. Yes, it does. But I feel guilty because the thing I do feel guilty about is I feel like I should be playing traditional Dota just to prove that it's still got it, and I still want my item to have to be delivered by a horse that someone hasn't bought.
It is actually, it's quite brave really for a developer to sort of add this new mode, which it sounds to me like it completely excludes one of its sources of things you can buy. Like couriers are quite a moneymaker, I imagine, for them.
Yeah. The couriers are a big cosmetic thing. That's like couriers have always been one of the less they're popular, but like 90% of Dota players probably never buy a courier in their lives. So the courier only reflects the look of the person who bought it. So, if you don't actually ever, they tried changing that once actually. They tried changing it so that when you summoned the courier, it transformed into your version of it. But people didn't like that because basically one of the only things going for supports in terms of cosmetics was like, look, you've got my horse.
Yeah,
it's
you
a
want
little
to
man.
foist your horse on other people. See your horse.
Ancient truth about human psychology.
Yeah.
You want to foist your horse on other people.
We've got like, maybe this is just the end of, maybe between every part of this podcast, we've described the end of reliable horse delivery in modern games. Your courier failed, Tom, and I'm now advocating for the removal of horse-based item delivery in all of its forms. But yeah, nonetheless, it's cracking. I really like it. I had been meaning to kind of break my Dota duck. Like I'd been out for a while and sort of, lots of things had drawn me away, but it's nice to go back because it does feel like that reminder of like, oh boy, this is the best game ever made. And, it's still got it. Still got the wizards and the war. And it's also a sport. And it's the best game ever made. That's how I feel about that. It's okay. Just land.
Back to neutral.
Hot take landed. Dial that thing down to a 3.
Out of 6.
Now that I finished landing my lukewarm takes, should we do some questions?
Yes.
From the internet, just masking the fact there was a little break there.
Yes.
Flawless. Our first question comes from my monitor, which I'm not looking at, and I'm not in a position to look at because of the angle that I'm facing towards Alex. Cover for
that's
me,
the
guys.
other questions this week.
I'm rotating. I've rotated slightly.
He's moving.
Oh boy. It's Rahul who writes, "Hi, crumpets and croissants. A question last week from Alex regarding lost internet artifacts reminded me of something I tried to find recently. Back in the Quake 3 Arena Unreal Tournament days, I went through a phase of enjoying rat maps. Essentially maps set in everyday though somewhat fantastical locations, e.g. a kitchen or an office, where you are shrunk to the size of a rat. They were a bit of a novelty, but they were usually designed to be twofold exploration maps with lots of nooks and crannies, hidden pathways and silly humour that could be played in a multiplayer arena with the usual weapon and health pickups, etc. There was one that came with a PC Gamer demo disc and was set in an office filled with boxes of Quake and Half-Life and random toys, etc. It had loads of hidden secrets tucked away, many of them revolving around the PC Gamer staff at the time. It was brilliant." He's included a link, which I'll put in the show notes. A, did you ever play these? B, do you know of any current games that would fill this compact and dense exploration/discovery itch that I'm missing from these maps? Not necessarily providing a narrative, just a fun space to explore, like the gaming equivalent of a Where's Wally page. If there's a story that can be gleaned by putting together the pieces of the world, a la Dark Souls, that's even better, I suppose. Regards, Rahul.
Yeah, I played these. The one I played most was in Action Quake 2. I don't remember what it's called. Probably called Rats or something. But it was someone's bedroom, I seem to recall. And yeah, fucking with scale is fun.
I remember this too.
Made an interesting space.
I miss things like this. I miss jump maps. I miss I miss the community that could grow up around mapping, to be honest.
All this stuff is now Minecraft now.
Oh yeah, shit.
Yeah.
So like there's a big thing in making outer scale maps and filling maps with kind of incredible, intricate little spaces to explore. They're not quite as fulfilling because it's all very blocky and, you know, like some of that.
We'll never catch on.
That immediate kind of, whoa, you know, look, you know, what you can do with Quake 3 engine.
Look, he scanned a Half-Life box and made it big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is something I used to kind of like, a daydream about as a kid as well. Like, you know, you'd be in some boring situation and you'd imagine like, what if I was a guy who was 1 inch tall in this situation and jumping across that desk and then back under here.
You say a boring situation. What you mean is school, right?
My whole life at that age. As a kid, you're always in places that are understimulating to you.
Yeah.
And the one that I always was most excited about was like, if you're in like a garden or a forest or something, imagine him being tiny and scaling like one of those trees.
Yeah.
I remember in particular there's like, I'm not actually sure what the type of tree it is. The ones that are kind of conical in overall shape and, kind of bushy.
Pine trees? Spruce?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, Landadai, you know, what is it?
To be honest, I wouldn't know the right name if you said it to me, so I won't say yes or no to that. But if you, like, on the outside they look kind of, they've completely covered by the green bits. Yeah, they're not really, they're not really leaves though. They're like long, elongated
needles.
Yeah.
Episode 214 of the Crate and Crowbar when revealed
This is supposed
Tom
to be a
Francis
quick
doesn't have a
story.
fucking idea what a
Tom
tree
Francis
is.
hasn't been outside.
They're different to normal leaves.
There's not been a tree in any of his games. Now you know why.
What I'm trying to say is the outside is very dense.
Have you ever put a tree in a game?
No. I was going to do that for the next game, but now I'm cancelling it. Inside those trees, it's just branches and it's much less dense. And so it's like there's this secret cave inside. And it's not that interesting when you're human sized because you can't get in there. But if you were tiny, it would be an amazing like jungle gym of all these branches in the darkness with all this vegetation around you. Someone should make that?
Yep. We had a tree in my garden like that when I was growing up, but I could climb it. Maybe because I am small. Not that small.
We had one as well. Yeah, they all kind of get hollowed out, especially if you go in there and you can chop out bits. But yeah, those games. Thing is, like, in terms of intricate spaces to explore, like, unfortunately got enemies in the way, but like Dark Souls games are quite sort of, like, you know, those details.
Yeah, I did mention them.
But then also, like, walking sims, you know, they are just places and some of them are quite intricate.
Edith Finch is a good example of this.
Finch and...
Although I think a lot of its secret spaces are, like, there for you to find. Like, it's not, like, you know, Easter eggs necessarily. It's... Yeah. But it has that feeling of like breaking into parts of the space.
Everyone's gone to the Rapture because there's so much more off the path.
I think it's not as satisfying to explore though because the environment is disconcertingly open. The nice thing about a room that's full of secrets is you have a boundary to explore. And
that's what I liked about Finch was that because it was a house and as weird as that house is, it does have very defined borders. Like everything has to fit into that little boxy shape.
But yeah, these are cool. And Minecraft's a really good shout, actually. I'd wondered where it had gone. But that's...
It's weird. Loads of stuff has gone quietly into Minecraft.
I suppose it's just the set of tools that a new generation of people interested in those things are using, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not Worldcraft anymore.
Yeah.
Or Build or whatever.
It's easier.
Yeah. But also more available as well. So it'll be a bigger group of people making more stuff.
Yeah.
Huh.
Land it.
Landed on a 3. Not too hot, not too cold. It's a Goldilocks take. Next question comes from the devil. And this person has gone to the effort of registering an email address.
What if it is the devil? In which case that is his email address.
What? Lucifer Cool Guy.
Yeah, that's exactly what the devil would call himself.
It does sound like it.
That's not the entire email address, because I was going to read out the entire email address, and I realized I'd just be reading someone's email address. So, well, though I imagine this isn't an email address they use for work or like. Anyway, Lucifer Cool Guy writes, Dear residents of the mortal realm. Don't know why I'm doing a voice for that. I should do a voice for this. You've arrived in hell, and your punishment is to eternally play Dota 2 and keep losing every game until the end of time. In this scenario, which would you find more frustrating? 1, eternally losing because your teammates are to blame. They always make the wrong decisions, and no matter how hard you try, you cannot carry the team. If only your teammates hadn't messed up, you know you'd be able to win. 2, eternally losing because your opponents are slightly more skilled than you. No matter how much you improve, they will always be slightly ahead of you, able to anticipate your plays and make better on-the-fly decisions. Your teammates do well, but the enemy team is always better. Keep up the podding. It pleases me, the devil. I would definitely 100% pick the second one.
Me too.
Because it maps clearly onto my actual experience of Dota 2.
But not turbo.
Not turbo.
Yeah,
but, you know, I mean, I play, you know, when I'm back in my Hot Dukes taking Dota seriously team days, that's pretty much the experience. You try and you improve, but the opponent's always better. So that's, you know, it's not that different. If that was my eternal punishment for whatever it is I've done,
that's not such a bad punishment because, you know, you can feel satisfied that you and the team played to your best.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be so bad for eternity.
Yeah.
Carpal tunnel.
Also, because you'd accept that you were going to lose eventually, so you'd be able to focus on having fun within the context of an opponent who's better than you. And this suggests that you have a sort of accord with your team, which is a more important relationship. Because you're all trying.
Yeah. Really? This is heaven.
It's at least
Lucifer.
purgatory. I wouldn't go so as heaven.
He's not so bright, this devil.
It's that, you know that parable about like heaven and hell at the same place, but in
the big spoons thing.
Yeah, the big spoons parable where everyone's got really long spoons at a banquet table, and that's heaven and hell. But in heaven, everyone's feeding each other, and in hell, they're all trying to feed themselves and failing. both Heaven and Hell are a Dota game where the enemy wins, but in Hell, everyone's blaming each other. And in Heaven, they're all like, oh, we tried our best, we did well.
That's deep, man. Which one would you go for, Tom? Because the answer is obvious.
It is the latter one. And I don't play Dota, so I can't speak to that. But when playing like badminton, I used to quite enjoy games where the opponent was just clearly better than me. I always felt like I learnt more and I improved faster.
Yeah, in every competitive context, and I'm a competitive person, like, it is so much better to lose because your opponent's just flat out better than you. Because you've actually got stuff you can learn, and you still improve even if you don't then win. Right? You still have this, in this scenario, you'd still have the satisfaction of getting better, you just wouldn't have the payoff of winning. And often winning isn't how you prove that you've improved, really.
There's emptiness in winning.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I would prefer to win. On balance.
I wondered, there was a little twitch came across your eye.
Yeah. I mean, given the option, I'd like to win things. But, I accept there's virtue in an honorable loss. Yeah, no, this is easy. This is easy, Satan.
I think we win.
Yeah.
Your gambit.
Yeah, indeed. So the devil shows up in front of you on a lonely crossroads at midnight and just makes you a really... like
Dota 2, bad team, or always lose. Boom.
But you both always lose either way. This would be more interesting if it was win, but your team is horrible, or lose against a better opponent. That would have been more interesting. Not to criticize the devil.
It could be hot water.
I don't know.
Wait a minute,
I think
that's
you
okay.
I think you can criticize the devil.
These takes aren't so mild that I can't criticize Satan.
Bad landing,
This is political correctness gone mad. We can't criticize the devil now.
Christ. I didn't realize that my lukewarm Assassin's Creed takes would take me to such a centrist attitude re Satan. I just didn't think I could end up there, and yet it happened to me. It could happen to you. Feel things. For God's sake, live!
Wow. This podcast actually came with a surprisingly strong message.
Go all the way to the Dead Poets take from... what were we talking about? Questions. Thanks, Satan. Next is... Next is Zoe, who writes, Dear Gracious Podlords, this question has been on my mind for several months, and indeed this email has gone through many iterations, but this is the most concise. What is the most unexpectedly strong emotional response you've had to a game? As an example, I certainly didn't expect to sob cry my way through the final 15 minutes of soon-to-be PC game, if it counts, Final Fantasy 15, when I first started out on the boy band road trip. Thanks for the many pod hours of entertainment, particularly Little Grey Cells, which has been pure delight every week so far. Zoe.
I mentioned one the other week about Assassin's Creed Origins, just flying into Alexandria as an eagle and just taking in the majesty of that world from like the perfect perspective and this really serene, beautiful experience, and just like being stunned in a way I never have before at the like extraordinary work and like accomplishment that world represents. And yeah, as I said before, I think it's like partly that this world is bigger and more meticulously detailed than others, but not by a huge amount. It's more that this is the perfect way to experience it. It's just such a nice way to take it all in and see its full size and its full scale all at once.
Like, I'm a big softie, so there's so many, like, the thing about this that I find difficult is not emotional reaction to games, it's unexpected ones. Yeah. So, yeah, like, just, sort of, wept probably continuously through the entire back hour of Mass Effect 3, but that's not going to surprise anybody. Not in a kind of traumatic way either, just a sort of like, just
a gentle mewling.
Yeah, I'm just mewling. They're so beautiful, the spaceships, and they're in danger. Let me see. So actually one that was probably unexpected, I guess it's not going to be unexpected, but like, I find myself occasionally in the right mindset, and by which I don't mean a little bit drunk, but it might get me there, to be sort of genuinely a little bit affected by Elite, which is a strange thing because it's ultimately a dry game about moving boxes.
Very, very cold.
But yes, it's very dry, but sometimes, especially now that it's gained like the planetary rover stuff, I think there's something about scale. This maybe applies to the Alexandria thing as well. There's something about feeling very, very small that I find quite affecting. And it's not an emotion like, I wouldn't be like bawling at it, but there's a sort of like, sense of,
Or?
Yeah, awe and scale and, that gets beyond, wow, what a big game thing that is. It goes beyond impressed to like impressed upon. So you sit there in your little buggy on a moon somewhere and you can look up and see your own ship hovering above you. Or like, parked somewhere and it's huge lights and it looks huge, but when you're in it, you feel tiny and then you can see space and all the stars and distant moons and things like that. And it all stretches out beyond you. And it's all kind of algorithmic and kind of, very dry, as people say, like in terms of its actual content. But that is, I find surprisingly effective at sort of evoking a kind of emotional response. I think of some others.
I've been playing Mario Odyssey, and it's just joyful. Like it's just and there is a sequence in it, which I won't talk about. It has been shown off and things, but it is just a celebratory kind of visually stunning, surprising kind of like explosion of stuff that just happens in a sequence, which is just, you just think, oh God, this is just so good. So good. Where everything, your kind of love for Mario and kind of where these games have come from and, the fact that I've grown up with them and all that kind of stuff, combined with the fact that it's good to play and it's visually amazing. Like in terms of kind of muling, it's probably like, I think the last time it wasn't, I was affected was probably the death of Aggro in Shadow of the Colossus, where you've got this amazing horse, they've made no effort to kind of give it emotions or anything. It is a tool, but it's beautiful and it's just obeyed you more or less all the way through the game. And then, in order to get to the end, it dies, you have to, you jump over a chasm and it doesn't survive the jump. And like, shit, they went there. One of those moments, no.
I guess,
the final delivery the horse could make
before being patched out of the game.
It was some other player's horse as well, like it was a unicorn thing. I don't know.
I guess on that note, I won't say what it is, but the moment in Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, that is pretty. The game is famous for it now, but when you don't know that that's coming, the game until it sort of tries to be emotional, but none of it was doing much for me until the sort of climactic thing towards the end, that is just an extremely effective bit of both storytelling and interaction design.
I find I'm aware that this chat might wander into big spoiler territory for a lot of games. I think Shadow of Colossus is way beyond statute of limitations now,
yeah.
But
I think it's just about to come out on PC though, isn't it?
I know. It's getting a remaster on PS4, isn't it? But come on!
Is it? It's PS4.
There's a really big,
that's right then.
Oh shit moment in the penultimate episode of the first season of The Walking Dead, which really bummed me out when it happens. Like, really bummed me out. And I think that counts as an emotional response as well. Like in a proper like, oh, why did that,
You're talking about Telltale?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil that necessarily because I think people, that has been ages, but still.
Weirdly enough, yeah, I'm someone who didn't finish it and kind of plans to one day.
Right, so I'm not going to spoil it, but there was a real, like, I felt it. Like, it was an unfortunate thing that was beyond my control, and it wasn't that I was angry at the game because it makes sense that it's beyond my control, but there's an element of like, oh fuck. Like, you know what I mean? When you're used to bad things happening in games all the time, but it's always fixable. When something isn't, it actually does get you, I think.
Yeah, it's where the agency thing kind of actually gets some power, isn't it? Even if you didn't have any control.
But yeah. But I feel things all the time. I fully buy into every story I'm told, basically. So I'm a bad example.
Good landing.
Thanks, man. Why am I resetting everything back to fucking zero every time? It's afternoon pods. Next, Damon writes.
Demon.
Nice try, Satan. With moral dilemmas still being popular in games, how can developers make these carry real weight to the player themselves? As an example, I recall in previews of Fable 3 it was mentioned that to get good karma points in one section, you'd have to help an old man through a desert slowly and painstakingly. Would-be heroes would have to invest a significant chunk of their precious time, I don't recall how much, but 15 minutes sounds vaguely familiar, into this good deed. A price with significantly more impact on the player than picking the good dialogue option. Maybe it could be argued that concerns over games respecting the player's time mean that this precise example isn't desirable, but I feel it's worthwhile to try and make these moral choices less simple. Isn't a good deed good because it involves self-sacrifice of some sort? Is this something worth pursuing? And could you think of any examples where a game had more interesting requirements to be a goody-goody than this option gives you less gold? Angelically yours, Damon.
I think this is a long-standing and maybe unsolvable problem in game design in that you can't solve it for everyone because a large chunk of players see the option you reward as the option you are incentivizing. Like you are telling them, if you give more money for this, you're telling them this is the way to do it. This is the way to play. Do it this way. And that is diametrically opposed to creating, an interesting moral choice where the option that is morally good gets you less reward. And so you can fix that and you can make it so the morally good option gives you less reward, but then a whole bunch of people will be like, why are you incentivizing the bad option? Why do you want me to be a bad player? And then they'll play that way, they'll play the bad way and not enjoy it because it's not really how they want to play and then complain at you for that. And that's kind of, you could fairly call that a player problem, not a designer problem, but it doesn't change the fact that if you do that, that will happen because that's how people perceive games.
And the problem is that there aren't any morals in games.
Yeah, we're all just amoral
people. You're like, you're not benefiting anyone by helping the digital old man.
True, but that's arguably a little bit reductive because you're not really doing anything, right?
Well, I got even more bleak.
But the morality is serving your ongoing progress with the game. So if anything in games, morality is relating to kind of getting gold so you can buy yourself some new shoes.
So I think,
so maybe some mana shoes.
I think a lot of this comes down to systemic complexity because, as Tom's story from Assassin's Creed, although it wasn't necessarily a story of altruistic good, so much as one weirdo walking to Memphis, which is a song, I think. It was still the sort of range of systems in the game allowed you to attempt something to set your own objectives. And I think something that you can do is simply present players with situations where they have the option to try and bring about to bring about something that they feel is good or just or whatever by their own standards. So a good example of this that occurred to me recently actually occurs quite early in Divinity Original Sin 2, where you find a kind of a caravan that's been completely raided, lots of bodies everywhere, and one survivor, and he's from a faction that you're very likely to be in open conflict at that point. But in the raid on this caravan, he's been blinded. He's lost both his eyes. And so he can't see you, and you have lots of options to lie to him and kind of whatever. You can be open with him. If you admit who you are, he will try and arrest you, even though he can't. And how you react to that is, you're given the full range of options. It's simply through the kind of dialogue-y bit. You're given the full range of options in terms of attacking him or trying to bargain with him or trying to heal him and this kind of thing. But then what follows is another attack. And the game is complicated enough that he obviously acts as an NPC. He misses all the time because he's blind, but he's still there as an NPC, and because it's Divinity, he can die in that fight, and it doesn't have any bearing on the way the game progresses. You probably do have to put a little bit of thought into how you organize your party and who you put in the line of fire to keep him alive through that. Similarly, if you then aggro nearby enemies in that area, he's quite likely to aggro them as well. So there's a mini game that kind of organically crops up about like keeping that guy alive or like keeping him safe. And I don't know yet. I don't know if it pays off in another way or you can find another solution there, but there's a way to act good or to try and act compassionately. That isn't
what you're looking for is interest. You're just looking for an interesting story,
Yeah.
And playing good can lead to an interesting story.
Yeah.
It's like Skyrim isn't a game that often supports this. Like trying to get NPCs through random encounters, that kind of thing. There's
an amazing story about the guy who adopts a dog in Skyrim and then has to go to extraordinary lengths to protect it. Have you read this?
Oh, yeah, it's a Twitter thread, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good story. I mean, it's borderline good because it does involve murdering someone and shouting his body in front of it. But I'll link it.
Yeah.
It's certainly, what I'm saying, I guess, is that the key to this a lot of the time is not mandating a kind of developer sense of what's good and bad, but providing sufficiently complicated circumstances and systems that the player can chart their own course through.
And a whole bunch of people, like the people I was talking about before who would complain about incentivizing bad options, they will just not do this, but they also won't complain about it because they won't know that it's
I
there.
think that is the problem with morality systems. You know, like you can do, you know, like Divinity. You know, you get the idea that if you do good things, then certain characters will like you more and you'll get opportunities with them, you know. And if you do bad things, then other characters would, you know, ally with you. So what you get is a systemic sort of set of kind of, and it's not moral stuff. It's simply systemic stuff. And, you know, actually I'll revise my thing. That morals aren't about progressing the game. Moral in a game is getting an interesting shit happening.
Yeah. I think actually Divinity's very successful at that part because actually I found myself, given a sort of BioWare style, very polarized morality system, I'll tend to swing hard good, basically. But in Divinity, it ended up being far more, muddy. And it's because I'm not save scumming, some things just go wrong. Like,
well, it's very difficult. Like there are very, very, very few clear cut.
Yeah. And there's some interesting scenarios, like, sometimes you'll finish a fight, or sometimes you'll get in a situation, sometimes either by accident or on purpose, you'll click on an NPC while controlling a character you weren't expecting to be controlling. And that's really interesting because depending on which of your companions it is, sometimes that can just end in a fight because this person hates this person. And so you end up killing an NPC that you weren't planning to kill because sometimes you don't have any control over this. It's like a fight has ended and the NPC just goes and talks to whoever's nearest, which makes sense, but they happen to talk to the elf who hates everybody. and then you find yourself exploding that person because that's the way the fight goes and stealing all of their things and they're just dead. But it's more interesting to carry on with the game at that point. And that reminds me a lot more of tabletop RPGs.
And stories in general, actually, you know, it's very, good stories don't have kind of like everybody being paladins all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think the answer is simply, you absolutely can it can absolutely be inconvenient to be good, but the player has to make the decision to take on that inconvenience because it's important to them. Whether that's taking the wrong body back to Memphis for no reason to traumatize a child who doesn't deserve it, or it's saving
the moral good option.
Yeah, exactly. What is that? Is that just chaotic neutral?
It's chaotic something. For sure.
That is all of the questions we've got time for this afternoon. If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode of the Crate and Crowbar, you can do so by emailing us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can also tweet us at Crate and Crowbar and hang out with our community on Discord, the link for which is on our website at crateandcrowbar.com. As ever, this episode is supported by our Patreon. If you'd like to find out more about supporting the podcast and our spin-off projects, you can find out more information at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. You can also find this episode and our other episodes and our Bloodborne series and other stuff on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. And as ever, any, likes and rates and subscribes and iTunes reviews and those kinds of things that you fancy leaving us are much appreciated and, very helpful, as is simply sharing the podcast with people if you enjoy it. It's always a big help. So thank you if you have done that. That's all of the outro stuff, I think. That was relatively clean, I thought.
Oh, it was good. You landed it well.
Yeah. Average. 3 out of 6. If you'd like to follow us individually on Twitter, I'm on Twitter at CThurston. That's CTHURSTEN. Alex?
I'm at Rotational.
Yeah, people know how to spell that.
Rotational.
Just all rotating now.
And I am Pentact at PENTADACT.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Alex, you didn't say thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, Alex.